Well, well, well. Another week, another bunch of sad news, but there's also positive news, and I think that we have found the perfect balance. Thanos would be proud. But this week we're going to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy, the rumor coming out that she was going to retire, and then her coming out and saying she's not going to retire. And then Monolith Studios, for some reason, is getting shut down. And then on top of that, we do have good news. Bloober Team is working on another Silent Hill game. And I have finally finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Yes, that took me a minute, and I'm going to finally give you my final review on that. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. Welcome, folks, once again, to another episode of On the Grind. Alright, so, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. When I did my first impressions video about, or not video, but when we did first impressions on the podcast, it has been 2 weeks since I started this, which is wild to think about. But 2 weeks in, I just finished it last night. I shit you not, I streamed for 10.5 hours, I think it was, to do the finale of the game, the last couple of chapters. And at least I think that's about how long I went. Serena, you were watching. How long did I go?
You went for like 7 hours.
I want to say it was longer than that, though. Let me check. What does the VOD say? Yep, 10.5 hours. Specifically, 10 hours, 33 minutes, and 55 seconds.
Damn, Micah.
It's a hell of a sprint there.
Yeah, I was locked in for the end of that story. Locked the fuck in, and I have to say I regret nothing. So, let me give the audience an idea of what's going on, a quick rehash of what I talked about with the beginning of this. My journey with FF7 Rebirth, I had to upgrade my PC to play this. I am a big fan of the original Final Fantasy VII. I am a huge fan of just what I consider to be the golden age of Final Fantasy, which is Final Fantasy VI all the way up to Final Fantasy X. Those were the best games, in my opinion, in the entire franchise. Not saying that the games before 6 were bad. By no means are they bad. Not saying that the games after X were bad either. Just 13. But because 13 is terrible. But largely speaking, the best Final Fantasy games took place within the end of the SNES to the kind of the midpoint of the life of the PlayStation 2. There's just a lot of great games in there. Final Fantasy VI has an incredible story. It's one of the most epic stories ever told in an RPG. Ton of great characters. Fucking dark on top of that. Final Fantasy VII is the game that made Final Fantasy a worldwide phenomenon. Final Fantasy VIII was a pretty good follow-up on it. Had a fantastic gameplay. Story could have been better, but it was still good. Final Fantasy IX, tremendous story, old school gameplay. Final Fantasy X, very unique in all of the ways that it did things, and was kind of like the apex, in my opinion, of Final Fantasy gameplay, and kind of getting turn-based and making it really tense. Like, it was just a great time to be into JRPGs. Because especially like the PlayStation 1 era was like the best time for JRPGs as well. I haven't even played that many of them. Like, I played Final Fantasy stuff on that console, and I played Parasite Eve, and that's it. But even those were all awesome. I still need to play Wild Arms. I still need to play Legend of the Dragoon, stuff like that. But anyway, the process of playing FF7 Rebirth for me, when I first fired it up, even though I upgraded the shit out of my PC to where it's more than on par with most high-end modern systems, it's just not a very well optimized video game. So I had to install a few mods. Now, I'm actually going to bring those up for anybody that's watching this on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or any other podcast network. Which, of course, don't forget to follow the podcast if you're not doing so already. But I had to install a few specific mods to get it to work and run at a consistent 60 frames per second. And they are FF7 Hook, Ultimate Engine Tweaks, and Fantasy Optimizer. All three of those. Because apparently the problem with the game is that it does not pre-cache the shaders when the game fires up. So instead of having them all loaded in whenever you enter the game, it's trying to load them as you play, and it overburdens the system, causing frame rate frame rate issues. So with these mods, it fixes most issues. The one thing that or the one problem that gets added is that there is still pop-in, environmental pop-in, and there is also some stuttering in some of the cutscenes. So even with that, it is still not that good of an optimized video game. So for those of you out there that are playing this that are thinking about playing this on PC, just be forewarned that it takes some finagling to get a really good fidelity with this, unless you're have the top of the line graphics card, like a 10 or 15, 17, whatever core i9 fucking processor and whatever the fuck. I have a feeling that this one is not going to quite hit performance until they bring in DLS4 or DLSS4 or frame gen. I have a feeling once they do that officially, it will help quite a bit. It's actually been modded in, oddly enough. I don't know how they modded in frame gen, but I'm not arguing either. Because it as much as I'm not a fan of it, it does work. So, from a performance standpoint, I'm not super pleased. However, the storyline, there is now video of me on the internet crying while playing a Japanese RPG.
I mean, fair enough.
And now, not bawling, mind you. It takes a lot to get me to that point. But what you will see is, like the manly tear that men are allowed to shed every once in a while?
Hmm?
Just that one that falls out the side of your eye. I had quite a few of those moments. So I have not played a video game in a while where I have had moments like that, which is kind of sad if you think about, that's kind of a testimony to modern video game storytelling, is that you don't really get a lot of those emotionally charged moments. And there's Xavier.
Hello. You wouldn't believe the day I've had. It was very boring, but it was very long and tedious, and I am tired.
Hey,
feel
Xavier.
Hello.
Well, we're talking about happy things, at least at the moment, because I just finished a very long playthrough of FF7 Rebirth, and I'm currently gushing over it. But where I was leaving off was that there's a lack these days of
impactful game story. Anyway,
yeah, there's not a lot of games that come out that kind of bring out heavy emotional responses. At least not in my experience. Admittedly, the one thing that I've noticed is that the last one was also a remake. and it was Silent Hill 2's remake.
Oh.
To really get that out of me, you know? And there's still, like, occasional ones, like the PS4 Spider-Man game. The end of it definitely caught me like that, you know, where the manly tear, as I call it. But there's if you think about like the time frame between these games, those are gaps of years.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. Most of it comes down to the people that know how to do that and can do it consistently get fired at the end of every game's completion.
That is true, or they just leave for something else. Like CD Projekt Red basically had that with Cyberpunk 2077.
Right. Now that's just with Western devs. With Eastern devs, those teams are just kept a little bit smaller, but then those guys get like put on different projects and they get spread too thin.
Yeah.
So then, you know, getting something like Final Fantasy VII, like originally, is very much like lightning in a bottle. Because remember, as soon as that happened, they started putting that same team on different things. They put a couple of them on Parasite Eve. Had a couple of them were immediately working on Final Fantasy VIII. I think one or two went over to work on Vagrant Story.
Yeah. And the fact that they got as many of them as they did to come back and work on this is honestly crazy. It's literally like getting the band back together, you know, like for a reunion tour.
Boys are back in town.
Yeah.
Now,
Oddly enough, the word reunion was very intentional on my part. So,
Yeah.
Xavier, you have played Final Fantasy VII, have you not?
Yep, I finished it. And while I have not played Remake or Rebirth, I watched Octavius play Rebirth, and I did all the Chocobo races for him because he had trouble with them, and we took some turns on that on the mini games.
It's a lot of fun. I loved the Chocobo races. The reason I ask is that way I've got you here as sort of to help me frame kind of the story of FF7, and you know, so you'll at least understand context for certain changes that get made.
Yeah.
Because Serena and Mike have not played it. So the one thing that strikes me immediately about this particular game is that there was a phrase that came up from my chat in the stream last night, is the more things change, the more they stay the same. The more you experience something that makes you think that we're about to avert Destiny's path, the more you realize that Destiny is dragging you straight back to it.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about it is that by doing this in a weird way, they have done a really good job of investing you in the state of the world in regards to just the entirety of the world. For those who don't know, is called Gaia in Final Fantasy VII. And like getting you invested in what's happened here, what Shinra has done to the world, the wars that happened, all this other shit. And they do that by introducing a bunch more named characters that have their own personalities, enough of a history for you to kind of understand what they're all about, and just little things to make you realize that this is a living, breathing world with complicated people. And not everybody is what you think they are. And some people make absolutely fucked up decisions or fucking stupid decisions looking at you, Yuffie, you little shit. But the one thing that I will say about this, I'm going to try to balance out like positive then negative, positive then negative. Positive is that investment. You see a bunch of other characters that have appeared in either remake or appeared in extended media, like there's characters from Deep Ground in Dirge of Cerberus that are in the remakes. There's one character, a former Turk named Cisne from Crisis Core, the Zack game. She shows up and is a part of the story of a certain region. So on and so forth. And by having all these named characters that have their own things going on, their own struggles, and you just interacting with them, it feels much more like a living, breathing world. Whereas In the original, I never really felt that way. Now, granted, the story of FF7 was strong enough that it wasn't a necessity to have a ton of named characters, but at the same time, I kind of feel like if you're going to do this thing where you're going to take the original game and you're going to turn it into a trilogy, you have to fill it with character moments. You have to make the world feel more alive, and you have to have an investment in the people that are in it. Because if you don't, then it's just going to feel like a bunch of padding.
Now, you may agree, you may see where I'm coming from, you may disagree. Everyone's opinion is different. Pacing like that is going to be like just super important. Where to have your story breaks. Because 7, as it was originally written, was paced exceptionally well.
Oh, hell yeah.
In the very beginning of the game, what's the game about? Stopping the evil corporation from ruining the world. By the time you get to the top of Shinra Tower, you kind of feel like the game's almost over. And you've been playing for, what, 8 hours now?
If that, yeah.
Depending on what you've been doing, yeah. This would be a good place to wrap up the game. Then you find out that, oh no, you can't stop the corporation. In fact, you've been framed for murder. Now you've got to escape the city, and you've got to prove that you didn't kill that guy. Your only clue, a guy that's supposed to be dead. We've got to track him down. And it just keeps building up on itself. Like, as soon as you feel like you're getting to a conclusion to this part, things get better. You don't really get to a point where you're like, we're in this to save the world, which is every Final Fantasy's plot, until what? 75, 80% through the game. That's when concrete, it's been decided, we're saving the world.
In this, it's more, well, yeah, I would say probably like the 65% mark on the original, because that's the Northern Crater.
Yeah.
The, all we know is that there's this guy named Sephiroth and he needs to fucking die, and then you don't really understand the stakes of, like, as it goes on, it still is, there's this guy named Sephiroth and he needs to fucking die, but now you realize that it's not about him just dying to stop this small thing, it's about him dying to save the whole fucking world.
Well, yeah, what's more, he's supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
Everyone says he's already dead. And you see apparitions of him and ghosts, like ghostly appearances of him. I think it was a plot point that every time you see Sephiroth, up until the Northern Crater, when you kind of see him locked in like a giant piece of materia, it's always an apparition. Like,
yeah, it's like
it's always a wonder if everyone else
himself.
sees him or if it's just Cloud seeing him.
Yeah. And in this, they basically confirm that basically what he is able to do is control the men in black robes. Because of the cells in their body, he can effectively take over and transform them into himself. But yeah, so they managed to keep a very good pace in this, but admittedly it is a slower pace than the original because of how much area they have to cover. You know, each region you go to, like I mentioned, it has its own story to it. It has its characters, and you get to affect them in really interesting ways. It shockingly humanizes the people within Shinra. Not the people at the top, like Palmer and Scarlet and Heidegger and those guys. They're all shitheads. But it helps to humanize the little guy. Humanizes the Turks a little bit more. Humanizes the ground soldiers a bit more. Oddly enough, through if you remember the march in the Junon area, they've now made it a whole. Yeah, they gave it a whole bunch of pageantry now. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had to play that game.
Yeah, I really liked that section, and the one thing that I would say, though, is kind of a negative is that if you're expecting, for those who played the original, Xavier can confirm this, you get, by the end of Midgar, you get Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, Barret, Red 13.
For the most part, you have the party.
Yeah.
There's only like 2 other people that you would pick up that are like the main party, and then your optional characters.
Basically. Now in this, you only get 2 more people that you can play as on top of those 5. Now you couldn't play as Red in Remake, but so technically 3. But even so, Red has already been with us for a bit, so it doesn't really feel as new as you would think. The other 2 characters you can play as are Yuffie, who admittedly is a blast to play as. I still hate her. Still hate her character. She's annoying as shit. But she's a lot of fun to play. Because her abilities are just fucking sick. Her whole gimmick is that, she's really fast. She's a ninja. What else do you expect? But the big thing with her is that she is really good in long boss fights. Because a lot of her abilities, they build to a crescendo where she has a couple abilities that literally are just giant explosions. Which are, it's sick. And then Kate Sith is a trickster kind of a character where, because he's a cat that rides a giant fat Moogle. And in this, the Moogle can be operated away from Kate Sith. So you can use the Moogle as a distraction to do range damage, cast magic, things like that. And then reunite for certain abilities that you get as well. Which are all, again, very tricky. That work into the stagger mechanic of the game, where you can do extra damage if you fill up the stagger bar. Kate Sith is really good at doing that. But as an alternative, it's a very squishy character. Both him and Yuffie are that way. Here's what's depressing for me. My favorite characters outside of Midgar are Vincent Valentine and Sid Highwind. You don't get to control either of them. I'm not happy about that. Because, I'm gonna be honest, Vincent and Sid are awesome. They are the most, like, they're just fucking cool. Especially Sid, because he just, like, curses at everybody. And just doesn't put up with anything, and he fucking hates Palmer. It's great. I love it. And then Vincent Valentine is kind of like the man who knows everything, which is kind of the appeal about him. He hates Sephiroth just as much as you do, but you don't find out why. And then when you do find out why, you're like, oh fuck. Like his story is dark. Like you understand why he looks like the way he does, and why he's got the big ass emo hair, and he doesn't talk very much, and he's all brooding and mysterious and shit like that. He's got a reason. So, not getting to play as them, it was cool getting to see them. Vincent is actually a boss fight, believe it or not, in the game. You fight him in Nibelheim. Because he gets into a scuffle and then he turns into the Galian Beast. But you don't get to use him. And it's kind of a bummer because he's with you like in Nibelheim and then the last stretch of the Golden Saucer and then the last 2 chapters. So he's there with you for almost the last third of the game. Well, actually, no, last quarter of the game. And you don't get to use him. And then Sid is with you from like the halfway point. And you don't get to use him. So it's one of those things where it's like, I was kind of pissed off because I'm like, you're kind of cucking me out of the 2 characters that I use quite a bit after I leave Midgar. You know, I use my final party in, like, I think the first time I ever beat FF7 was Cloud, Tifa, and Vincent. Because Vincent's magic abilities are on par with Aerith's, oddly enough. But the gimmick, though, is that you don't want to give him the white mage stuff, because his limit break, you lose control of him, but he also gets stupid powerful. So, needless to say, that's a negative. So if people out there, it's like, oh, cool, Vincent and Sid are here, you don't get to play as them. It's depressing.
I've been
But
hearing a lot about the time jannies. What's with them?
so the thing with the time jannies now, the big gimmick, and this is spoilerific, so for those of you listening that you don't want spoilers, plug your ears. Um, the thing with the time jannies is that they were arbiters of fate called whispers in remake, and a lot of them had come under control of Sephiroth to the point where he was able to control effectively a being that represented fate itself. And he forces you at the end of remake to kill it. It's either that or die. But by killing fate, effectively what happened is you fucked time up. And now on one planet, there exist several different timelines. All possibilities of what could happen. On one of those timelines, some characters that are supposed to be dead are not dead. Not all of them, but a couple of them. The key one being a character named Zack Fair, who was Cloud's friend when Cloud was working with Shinra. He was a first-class soldier like Sephiroth. Pretty badass dude. So by doing that, they have effectively created a situation where there's these new timelines, and we don't know what the fuck is going to go on with them specifically. And I will actually say at the end of Rebirth, we still don't know. All we know is that there are some people that are alive that shouldn't be. And there are some people within both timelines that know some information that we don't know how they know it. So I have a feeling that a lot of that will get revealed in the third game. But that's what the time jannies are. The other thing about them is that these whispers, some of them are...
This going to be a third game?
Yeah, it's a trilogy.
3 discs.
Ooh. Yeah, how big is this?
They've been really good about trying to keep each game to where you change your disc.
Yeah,
I don't know if they kept it consistent with where disc 2 ends versus disc 3.
They didn't, because disc 2 had a lot on it. Because disc 2 had everything. Disc 1 leaves. Disc 1 leaves off after Junon. So in this, the first game is just Midgar, and then the second game is everything from Calm, all the way to all the way to the Temple of the Ancients and the Northern Forest. So the third part will be everything that's further than the Northern Forest, like the Mountain Village and all that shit, all the way to the final battle at the Northern Crater.
It should also include Wutai, right?
Yeah, the Wutai will definitely be in there. They drop a lot of hints that Yuffie wants to go back, and that there's going to be reason for you to. They're broadening the story of it, basically, to make it a lot more involved. So regardless, the way that it plays out, like I said, there's some things you're gonna be disappointed by if you're looking at certain things, but the other parts of it are really fun because getting around the environments and interacting with them, there's a lot of fun side quests to do if you want to do them. If you don't do them all, it's not really going to penalize you necessarily. There's only one quest that if you do all of it but you haven't leveled your characters up, you're going to hate. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of the proto-relic. What it effectively is the armor of Gilgamesh from Final Fantasy V. And Gilgamesh is kind of hilarious because he's just a big goof, and he's voiced by Keith Zarbajka, who, for those who don't know, is the voice of Joshua Graham from Fallout New Vegas. He also played not Harvey Bullock in The Dark Knight, where he was basically Harvey Bullock, but for some reason they didn't call him Harvey Bullock. But regardless, that quest is a boss rush at the end of it. All the bosses are stupid powerful, so if you're not max level by the time you fight them, it's gonna be lame and stupid. So I didn't do it. If I replay the game and I go for 100% completion, I will probably try to kill them, but I just didn't care by the end of it. So that was a letdown. Because they make a big deal out of that quest. The other thing that I'll also say about it that's a change from the original, there's a lot more levity in this section of the game than was in the original. Like, the kind of the levity moments in the original, from when you go from Junon all the way to, like, the Temple of the Ancients, like, all the levity was kind of restricted to, and Xavier, correct me if I'm wrong on this, basically the Golden Saucer stuff and Kate Sith.
Yeah. They still do the date.
Yep, and I'll get to that in a second, but yeah, they still do that, but there's, like, a lot of the funny haha stuff is...
which is absolutely necessary. One of the goofiest parts of the Golden Saucer, which kind of comes out of nowhere, is the hotel you stay at.
Yeah.
And it was silly then, it's silly now, but it really warms the heart how much detail they put into this, because it's the only place that has rooms available is a haunted house hotel.
Ah.
Complete with graveyard. And if you check out the grave, stuff pops out, and they got holograms. I believe the bellhop is, like, wrapped up, like, it dangles from the ceiling.
Yep.
That's goofy as hell. I'm for it.
Yeah,
right?
And it comes back in Rebirth too. So there's all of that, but there's a lot more levity in this. There's a lot more humor. Because what a lot of people don't know about Final Fantasy VII, it is a surprisingly dark game. The original. Like, there's a lot of, like, you wouldn't expect it unless you had played Final Fantasy VI before, which, let's be honest, not that many people had back when the original came out in 1997. You know, like, there wasn't a whole lot of, like, dark shit that was really present in RPGs, if you were even an RPG player at the time. Whereas Final Fantasy VII is, like, there's a lot of death, a lot of destruction, like, a lot of dark shit. Rebirth kind of doesn't really dial it back. All those dark moments still happen, but there's enough levity between them that it kind of feels a little bit milder than the original story did, because there's parts of the original 7 when you're up until the point where you get to the Gold Saucer, it is just a depression fiesta because of all the terrible shit that's happened. You go through certain characters' backstories, you go through Barrett's, you go through Tifa's and Cloud's, you know, you go through, like, all of that. Like, it's wild to me that they managed to do it, but they also made those darker and sadder moments even more impactful than they were in the original. Especially the sequence with Barrett's friend, whose name is escaping me at the moment. But his friend, the friend with the gun arm that he had. That scene is fucking painful. What else was there?
Dine,
thank you. That scene was painful. There's you actually see, one of the cool things is that you get to see Loveless, the play, played out at the end of the Golden Saucer quest when you go on your date with your paramour or person that you influenced. And there's oh, go ahead.
Real gamers go on the date with Barrett.
Oh God. But apparently in this, the date with Barrett just flat out tells you, look, Tifa's into you, you idiot. Start picking up on it.
Which is ludicrous because nobody cared in the original until Kate Sith decided, I'm about to die, so let me be a fortune teller. For the first time, and act as your matchmaker. Cloud, you and Eris are compatible. I'm really sorry, Tifa.
Oh, what a dick!
And he treats this big moment is like, I am now going to sacrifice myself for the party, for the team, and this will undo the stuff that I did earlier. And then he does it, and everyone feels really, really bad until Kate Sith walks up from behind him like, "Hey guys, I'm back."
What a prick.
What
a prick.
Because he's a fucking he's Tycho RC.
Oh no.
He's
He's
a robot cat.
remote controlled.
But regardless, they make the date a lot more emotional. Aerith actually gets to sing this big number that is probably the reason that the game was given Best Orchestral Score and Best Video Game Soundtrack at the Game Awards. Because the soundtrack of this game is fucking incredible. Like, it goes without saying. Like, the original was amazing, and this is just as good. And... But the fact is like, there's a lot of really good emotional beats and parts to it that equal that, but I guess you could either say it's, to some people are going to consider it more balanced. To other people who prefer darker stories and maybe even a misery parade, they're going to prefer the way that the original did it, just because of that dark element. So it's going to depend on your taste. I really liked this. I'm one of the people that thought it was more well balanced. Because I love dark storytelling, don't get me wrong, but I kind of don't like misery porn. And if they had done that same stuff in this, it would have honestly felt like misery porn. Because everything is voiced now, and it would have a different kind of emotional impact, because storytelling in video games is advanced as far as it has. So... I know some people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but let's be honest. If the scene in Final Fantasy VI where one of the characters attempts suicide done by a modern storyteller, it would feel really fucking dark. Because Final Fantasy VI is ridiculously fucking dark.
That's if they did it right, because every one of those games really does seem like lightning in a bottle. And the fact that they did it every single time consistently is what made Squaresoft so magical, where you see the Square name on a box, the logo, that meant something.
Yeah.
Okay? That means you're in for a good experience until it didn't anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think that they're starting to get that back, and I feel like this is a really good step in the right direction. I honestly think that this is... Overall, despite the problems that the PC port has, I have enjoyed these remakes more than I have 95% of the video games that I have played over the last... since the pandemic. Because that's when Remake came out. That's 5 years of gaming. These have been the most fun and most emotionally impacting and just... overall gaming experiences, some of the best I've had, despite performance shortcomings. There's not a lot of games that are able to do that. And it really is one of those things where you could tell, you could tell that a lot of people who worked on the original game are here and working on this. And the one thing that I love about it, and the fact that it's sort of, in a sense, remixing the original story to where there's new elements to it, to where it really is... It is basically it's not really a remake, it's a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. You're going on a new adventure with old friends, but it's also kind of the same adventure. It's a very unique way of doing it that doesn't take away the value of the original.
That's actually what makes it so brilliant from a creative but also a marketing standpoint, because 7 is one of the most valuable properties they have. Of all the Final Fantasies, even their Fabula Nova Crystallis project, which includes 14, 7 is the goose that never stopped laying golden eggs. Everything that they came up with that they attached to 7 was successful for the most part, just different degrees. The only thing, Dirge of Cerberus was technically successful, it just didn't do as well as they wanted.
Yeah.
Doing a complete straight remake and just not changing anything runs the risk of, okay, you've replaced this thing. Why would anyone go and play the old one? Because they have the new one now. Well, the new one's not as good. Well, it's a remake, so potentially this can damage the brand of the old one. And that has a potential to damage like other parts of the company. By having it be something completely different, and kind of the way that Evangelion does it, wherein I'm getting a little ahead of myself. All the way back to original 7, there was always the theory that everyone knew about called where the planet runs in cycles, where events are supposed to repeat themselves.
Yeah, this effectively does the. You mentioned Evangelion. I'll kind of I know what you're thinking. I'm going to surmise it real quick because we're like 40 minutes already into this, and we haven't even gotten to the next topics yet. Basic idea is that, you know, you're going back to the original story, but it's different than the original story. It doesn't kill the value of the original. It still is worth investing your time and money in because it's still a completely different game experience than what you're getting. It's just, you know, it's very similar.
Right.
You could call the next installment of it could be, for all we know, FF7 Reunion 3.33. You cannot rebirth. You know.
Yeah.
Oh no.
But the big thing that I think they're trying to show is because the idea that Gaia operates in cycles, and clearly people have memories from the previous game, that the same way everyone realized that the Rebuild series of Ava was a sequel, not a remake, the remake is a sequel to the original 7.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's still fantastic, and on top of that, yeah, you don't run into a thing where, though I still say, like, I'm glad that now the original Resident Evil games are all available on GOG. That's really good because I really enjoy the original Resident Evil 2 and 3. There's some argument to be made that if you play the remake of Resident Evil 2, you don't necessarily have to play the original unless you just want to see what it was like. Whereas with this, it's still very relevant. So it's a good thing that it was smart on their part, very smart. So so to that note, to wrap up this section, because we've been going on for so long with it, do I recommend it? Absolutely. If you don't want to deal with all of the problems of the PC version, if you happen to have a PS5, get that version. Or if you're going to invest in the PS5 Pro, get that version of it. It's going to be a lot more stable. I listed the mods at the start of this section that I had to install to get the game to run well on PC. If you're a PC gamer and you want to play it now, you were waiting on what I was going to say on whether or not you did, install those mods, or else you're going to have problems with it. If not, I would honestly say, if people say, I want to wait till it's more stable, I'm not going to argue with you, because I really feel like that's the one thing that's going to kill them in the long run, is they've really got to work on the stability of their PC ports, because I understand Square's frustration with dealing with Sony. Like, Sony, in my opinion, is kind of pricing themselves out of the market. So, you know, if you want to beef up the PC audience, it's a smart move, because there's more people PC gaming nowadays than ever before. But you've gotta get those ports worked out, or else it's gonna kill you in the long run. But regardless, still exciting. I'm gonna play through the original again on my own time after all that, just to kind of revisit it. But great game, fantastic, loved it. Would absolutely play again. All right, so time for bad news. This news is so fucking confusing to me. Why in the fuck did Monolith get shut down and not Rocksteady Games?
Nowhere.
Why shut down Rocksteady? What's wrong with Rocksteady?
Rocksteady is the ones that ended up creating, what was it? Suicide Squad.
Squad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is conundrum.
Yeah, because like they shut down. So according to Jason Schreier, Warner Brothers Games, they shut down Monolith, Player First Games, and WB San Diego, and they canceled the Wonder Woman game that Monolith was working on. Now, what gets my goat is you're shutting down Monolith, who is currently in production of a game that is a Wonder Woman title that is based on the architecture that they put forth with the Shadow over Mordor series. That sounds like money. That sounds like a lot of fun. And because those games played like Arkham. So if you're going to do a Wonder Woman game that kind of plays like Arkham, but you can also do Wonder Woman things in it, and use the Nemesis system and all that other stuff, like, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds a lot better than Suicide Squad.
Oh, God. Miles
Honestly,
better.
I think it's an issue of the executives that they're not gaming executives per se, or executives that rose up from a game development standpoint. They're business people, so they don't understand. Konami has the exact same problem because they had the Fox engine, which is incredibly fucking powerful. Fox engine could have been a fucking contender up there with like Unreal and Unity. They could have made big, big money licensing Fox engine out. They made one game with it. The end.
Basically, yeah.
So not understanding what they have and what's more valuable, I'm willing to bet the thing that saved Rocksteady is history. All the Arkham games.
That's what I'm thinking too, because this decision had to come from the above. I blame David Zaslav because based Zaslav does not exist. He never existed. No, he was never based. He's a fucking idiot. Warner Brothers was already in bad shape when he took over. Now it's worse. Like, everything that he has done has been a bad decision.
The only thing you can really give the man is that he's very decisive. And that if he feels that something needs to be just completely cut and buried, he'll do it, without hesitation. Sometimes for good, because it stopped that horrible Batgirl movie from coming out. Sometimes for bad, because that also cost us that really awesome Looney Tunes movie about fucking suing Acme.
Not to mention, not cutting off the Flash when you had all those issues with Ezra Miller, and not cutting out Ezra Miller when they had the opportunity to save face.
Yeah, Ezra Miller allegedly, I have to say, kidnapping a girl and keeping her, captive in his fucking sex dungeon, where he's, formed some sort of sex cult.
Yeah, like
remember, allegedly, because later on, this girl with who totally didn't have glazed over eyes and in a monotone voice said, "Oh no, I totally wanted to be here. He's totally cool with me. This is fine."
Yeah, like the fact that he's willing to cut bait on, he's just not that great of a decision maker in my opinion. He just does not see. Like his logic is all over the place, because the fact of the matter is that by canceling the Wonder Woman game, all the millions of dollars that you have invested in that they're out the window. They're gone. You're not getting it back, and you already lost a shit ton of money on Suicide Squad. So why make the decision to do that, where you could have at least given them the opportunity to possibly recoup your losses?
I think he's trying to play Moneyball, and in this regard, the Arkham brand is still very much a time-tested brand. It's very profitable, whereas a Wonder Woman game, as cool as it is, and despite everyone being very excited for it, is very untested. It may come out and it may make all the money. It may come out and make none of the money.
Yeah.
Whereas they know if a new Arkham game comes out, Arkham game is going to make at least this much money, probably more. And so he's possibly really playing Moneyball.
But the problem is he's not considering the Ship of Theseus, which
You're right.
which apparently if he's not considering that, he doesn't have Jonah Hill working for him like he does in Moneyball. He has some guy named Hona Jill instead, who instead of being a fat Jew is like a skinny Indian guy.
Oh no.
So the fact of the matter is that like he's really like the logic can kind of make sense, but like, there's also other things that aren't considered. I would not like Rocksteady fumbled the ball so fucking hard. And then when you look at it, all the guys that were at the top of the heap, we were talking about game developers like leaving after certain games get done. Like a lot of them left not long after they had completed Arkham Knight and moved on to other things in their life. And like at that point, it's sort of the same thing with BioWare. Like BioWare, none of the people that made BioWare the titan that it was are there anymore. They've been gone for ages, and that's why we've had things like Mass Effect Andromeda and Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So with this particular case, it's like it feels like they're not paying attention, or they're considering some things, and again, the logic can be made to be sound, but at the same time, when you look at the whole picture, it makes less sense. So it's just so frustrating to me because Monolith is a studio with such a rich history behind them, like the Blood games that you've got. The first Blood was like one of the big like build engine titles back in the day. Then you have Fear, probably the original Fear is like one of the best first person shooters of all time. You have the Condemned series. Oh yeah. Ugh. And Condemned was this tremendous, this melee brawler / horror / murder mystery sort of a series that you couldn't help but look at it and be like, oh my fucking god, like this is fantastic. And all that's gone now, except the one gimmick is that one of the guys who founded Monolith, he actually owns the IP for Condemned. So if there is the distinct possibility that maybe at some point, because that guy owns the IP, we could end up getting Condemned 3. It's possible. It's just you got to find somebody who's willing to develop it. But God, I just really feel like on this particular one, like Zaslav really fucked the dog. So, anybody else have any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, it's really sad because I really loved Fear, and I mean that series held up until the third.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Third was alright, I guess, in retrospect, but like that was only fun because you had to play with somebody else, and I played with my little brother, and we enjoyed the hell out of it for what it was. And then yeah, and I did enjoy the Mordor games. I didn't finish the second one, or even start the second one. But yeah, that was. It's gonna chap my ass that fucking the enemy system is gonna be stuck in there till 2036.
I loved Tron 2.0.
Was that Monolith?
That was.
Wow. But yeah, it's unfortunate, and hopefully everybody lands on their feet. Hopefully they start a new studio called Honolith and work on Condemned 3. That's I'm crossing my fingers there. But don't trust Zaslav. Zaslav is asshole. Okay. On to good news. So this just came out over the course of the week. Made me quite happy. So for those who don't know, despite some goofballs on the internet and their anger about it, Silent Hill 2 Remake did quite well, sales-wise. According to I think it was like a month after it came out, they had sold over 2 million copies. The most successful Silent Hill game in a while. And Bloober Team did really good with it. It was incredibly faithful to the original. The story plays out almost exactly the same as the original does, with some changes, but the changes that they made were kind of minute, honestly. Just little tweaks here and there. And to be honest, some of the people that were going fucking crazy about it online, they had never played the original and didn't really kind of get Silent Hill. Like, some people were under the impression that Maria is supposed to look like a supermodel. It's like, no, she's not. These are just regular people. These are not models.
Yeah. She is supposed to look, very sexual, like outgoing.
Yeah,
But it's just supposed to be a more sexualized version of his wife.
Basically, yeah. There's a psychological bit at play. I don't want to spoil it because goddamn, it's such a good game. But regardless, the game did fantastic. I'm actually checking the Steam page to look at the reviews. Reviews right now, after 26,229 reviews, overwhelmingly positive on Steam. So the few people that were going crazy, culture war crazy over it, seem to have moved on to the next outrage, because the news is the outrage and the outrage is the news these days. But regardless, well, go ahead, Serena.
I was about to say, now they're focusing on Kingdom Come having non-existent pedophilia in it. Like, all the characters in that game are adults.
God, that is the dumbest controversy in video games in a long, long time. But regardless, so the fact that now a lot of people were not quite sure about what was going to be happening with Silent Hill in regards to Bloober Team at this point, because the next thing that happened after Silent Hill 2 dropped is Bloober Team announced another video game that was not Silent Hill. It was a new IP, which looks like it could be some good and creepy stuff, which, I mean, they're horror developers, so that's kind of what you expect. But there's still some disappointment in the air. For at least that's from what I gathered. Is like, people are like, "Oh, this looks really cool." But the one thing I commonly said or saw was, "This looks really neat about the new game, but I really want to see you guys do more Silent Hill stuff." And that looks like that's the case. So the question is, what do you guys think they're going to do? I'm under the opinion that they're probably going to remake Silent Hill 1.
That would be really hard. I'm not gonna lie. That was such a strange fucking little game back in the day. But I mean, if anyone could pull it off, I would hope these guys do it.
I think they're going to do Silent Hill 4. Because Silent Hill 4 is a standalone game that does have ties to 2. Yes, in the original version, this was meant to be a completely different game, and all those ties to were added later. But if they're kind of making this from the ground up, knowing that it has ties to 2, it might come out to be a better game than what we got originally, and a lot more effective. Because if they can make some changes, Silent Hill 4 kind of breaks a lot of the lore. They could probably fix it and just make it a better story overall. Anyone that played Silent Hill 4, halfway through the game, you play through the game, then halfway through, it becomes an escort mission, and you have to play through all those same levels over again. But it's an escort mission now.
Yeah.
Whereas before you were on your own. And that's a real fucking pain in the ass. I get what they were going for. It just didn't work. But the other thing is it would be safe because they did a good job. But could they do it again? If they could take the shit show that's Silent Hill 4, make a good game, fix the broken lore, then I would be comfortable letting them do Silent Hill 1 and 3.
Fair enough.
But if they goof up 4, or it turns out 2 was just, lightning in a bottle, they were just in the zone and they'll never be in that in the zone again. 4 is a standalone title. It doesn't impact the ability to remake Silent Hill 1 and 3. Or potentially damage a Silent 3. You either liked or you didn't.
Yeah, and I think that that's not a bad way of looking at it. I'm just speaking from personal bias, honestly, when I say I want them to do the first one. Just because you pull off the first one, you're going to be able to do 3. Because those two are interconnected. The way I look at it, though, is I just see this as a net positive. This is, honestly, I think the shot in the arm that Silent Hill as a franchise really needed. Because as of right now, a lot of people considered this a dead franchise. And whenever they announced that they were going to try to bring Silent Hill back, of all things, a lot of people were skeptical. Because, what do you think of, money-making franchises for Konami at this point? You have Metal Gear and...
Then they fucked that up with Survive.
Yeah. Now, Delta looks like it's going to be good.
You could have some... You could have some Castlevania, but currently Castlevania is getting, eating shit with its animated adaptation.
Yeah,
can't be used to really sell Castlevania games.
Yeah, Nocturne, the first season was kind of eh. The second season, I haven't really heard of any reasons to watch it, so I'm not going to. And even then, as much as I love Warren Ellis, the third and fourth seasons of the original animated series that they did of it, the third and fourth seasons were really weak in comparison to the first two. So,
the animation is good. The fights and the choreography are good. I like that they brought in just Belmont, but this is supposed to be Richter's story. Richter is the strongest Belmont. He's supposed to be the strongest, vampire hunter that the Belmonts produced since Simon. He's the first one that could do item crash. He's supposed to be where Just was one of their most powerful just spellcasters. Richter was supposed to be as powerful as him with magic, but he had the vampire killer. And that's why what happened in Symphony happened. Why he went crazy in Symphony. But they haven't done any of that, and they've missed big opportunities. And I think the big meme is, we're on our second series, effectively season 6. No recognizable monsters, no recognizable villains. It's called Castlevania, and yet it takes no place nowhere near the titular castle. What are we doing here?
It's barely about Richter.
Yeah. Also, the writers are very much obsessed with religion bad, when by its nature, Castlevania should have some religious undertones, where there are people that use religion to do bad, but the idea of God existing isn't in of itself bad.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason that the third and fourth seasons had problems. Is there were some parts of it that were straight out of our atheism. There was one part where they're oh, why does a cross work on vampires from this and that and the other?
Oh.
And they're oh, they don't 90-degree angles or some shit.
Oh god, fucking
yeah. It's hell is a place you can go, and you can apparently traverse to that. Thus, heaven must be real. Even the demons mention that God is real.
Yeah, so it's like trying to go like multicultural with it is just fucking stupid. You've already pretty much established that the beliefs of Christians in God have merit because he does exist. And the blessings of God kill demons and vampires. So trying to backtrack on it is just fucking stupid. And, like trying to... They were kind of doing some stuff with the French Revolution in the first season of Nocturne that kind of portrayed it as if it's not really a positive. It's just kind of depends on your interpretation. Apparently in the second season, they just treat the French Revolution like a positive. I'm like, oh, fuck off. So, but yeah, like Castlevania is not in a good spot right now. Yep. So they're effectively banking on like this is a smart move, regardless financially for them to get with Bloober Team. I'm hoping that they backed up the Brinks truck for them, got as much money off that old whatever they made from the pachinko machines, and gave it to them, because I have a feeling that whatever Silent Hill game they do next, it could as long as it's not like the ones that were after Team Silent, I think that they'll be good. So, all right, final topic. I feel bad because I had a tweet that I thought was kind of funny, and I'm going to read it out real quick. As I said here, hey, someone get in touch with Doomcock. He can finally be right about Kathleen Kennedy leaving Disney. And I'm not going to lie. I ended up becoming a liar because of that. Apparently Kathleen Kennedy is not leaving Disney.
Is Disney leaving her?
Yeah, it's not that either. It's it's so weird to me because how do I even put this? I don't know even how this got started, honestly. Like she came out and did an interview that basically was like, no, I'm not leaving film and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, at this point, I watched this video that Serena sent us of Critical Drinker ranting about it, which admittedly was kind of cope on Drinker's part. But at the same time, and I'm not trying to say anything negative on it, it's just, we all have those moments. I honestly just thought to myself, I understand, man, I understand exactly why you feel this way. Because this woman has effectively driven one of the premier science fiction franchises ever into the fucking ground. And I'm
astounding. Good lord.
And still to this day, I'm kind of like in wonder of it. Of how on earth you could possibly goof up what honestly could have been a slam dunk. And we're at a point where, like, one of the, like, instead of creating more classics with, like, The Last Jedi, they effectively instead of creating those classics, they created a film that is now probably not only just the most divisive Star Wars film ever, probably one of the most divisive films in existence. And admittedly, I honestly think that the only reason it's divisive is that some people defend it because they feel a political reason to defend it, not necessarily because they think the movie's actually good. Because there's elements of the story in that are completely indefensible. Why in the fuck would you not share your plan with an entire battle group of fucking ships, especially your second in command? And then we're supposed to expect to think that character, purple hair Laura Dern, is a genius? We're not supposed to think she's a fucking idiot? Like, what?
It's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. Because Poe Dameron still held the role of wing commander, which meant that he could run his own mission, his own ops, under his own authority. That's how he was able to get those bombers in, and those. She said, "Pull those bombers back," and he said, "No, keep going," and they listened to him. So, if you just told him his plan, then he wouldn't have done what he did, and the whole movie's like really fucking convoluted because it's technically speaking the plan would have worked if they hadn't brought gone and got the slicer to sneak onto the ship so Rey could have her showdown. The entire thing falls apart and it doesn't really work very well.
A very strange movie. Strangely done. Strangely everything.
It almost feels like they had already started filming without a script, like they did Pirates 2, and then they scrambled to put a script together over a weekend.
It's Ryan Johnson that did this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe, if I remember correctly, J.J. Abrams wanted to try and recreate the magic of the original trilogy by going unplanned, and unfortunately, he got himself Ryan Johnson.
Apparently, he had a plan. He at least had an outline for the next 3 movies, and based on all the threads he left dangling. And Ryan Johnson got permission from KK to just throw all that shit out and do whatever he wanted. He instead made a movie that the messaging of the movie is supposed to be that you don't have to be a Skywalker to be, important in the Star Wars universe or to be in touch with the Force. Anybody can, which is a great fucking message for a Star Wars movie. However, it is not a great message for part 2 of a trilogy. Another message that's really bad for part 2 of a trilogy is the past doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Past doesn't matter. Kill it if you have to.
Yeah, kill it if you have to. Fuck the past. All my homies hate the past. All the homies look at you like, the fuck you what?
Pretty much. And I think that, like, the whole thing with Kathleen Kennedy, because I'm thinking about, like, all the stuff that came out underneath Kathleen Kennedy. Obviously, the most recent example is The Acolyte. That is... But I don't want to do recency bias here. Like, looking at her tenure. Looking back at the films and series that came out with Star Wars. I'm bringing up a list right now, and I'm admittedly yapping. But, so after her, she came in, we obviously have the sequel trilogy. The first one, Force Awakens, was okay. It's not great. It's got problems. I'd give it like a 6.5 out of 10. But then it followed up with like a 2 out of 10. Actually, no, I'd say it's a 1. Honestly, it's terrible. It's just a bad movie. And then I didn't even watch the third one. I've just heard like it's memed on so fucking much that I have a feeling it's not that great. Just somehow Palpatine returned.
And who? Okay, that fucking message was sent in Fortnite.
Really?
I'm not even joking. I am not even joking. The message that warned that Palpatine was sending out to the galaxy, and how he explained everything, like how he got back, was sent in an event in Fortnite.
What the fuck?
Nowhere else. It's something, isn't it? It's just
Man,
I don't
I have
know
no
what they were
words.
planning here. I don't know what they were planning here.
I have no words, honestly.
Honestly, it's we're treading old ground here. This.
Yeah, so let's go past that. The so after that, so there's those. Then there's Rogue One. Rogue One's a good movie.
Rogue One is great. Rogue One did exactly what I needed it to do, and before I went and saw, I said, if this movie doesn't end with every member of the team dead, then this movie is wrong.
Yeah.
Sure enough, it ended correctly. I will say that the way it is framed is bizarre, as it implies that Princess Leia's Corellian Corvette was there at the battle. When she wasn't, it was said that she received a transmission that is supposed to have had the plans, not that she was there.
Yeah,
Also,
that one's a little awkward.
Also, why would she be that? It's super fucking dangerous and blows her cover.
Yeah, but regardless, still a good movie. Then they did Solo. Never watched it. Wasn't interested. Just didn't seem.
I saw half of it, and I barely remember any of it, which is a big problem with the Star Wars movie or any movie that is supposed to be culturally relevant. Not remembering it, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Kind of like the last Batman movie. The Batman. Zero cultural footprint.
Yeah, except
for Riddler being a weirdo. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
like that. I don't know.
Paul Dano just doing Paul Dano things.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, after that, so after Rogue One, yeah, and Solo, we had The Mandalorian. I maintain that is what saved Kathleen Kennedy's bacon. Is she just said to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, she's known Jon Favreau, like, I think John's entire career. She has a lot of faith in him, and for good reason, because, like, John had come off of the like both Iron Man movies, the two good ones, and she's just like, I know you're a huge Star Wars fan, go nuts, Dave, keep an eye on him. And like Jon Favreau even invited George Lucas to be an advisor on it, and it was the best Star Wars anything that we had gotten since Return of the Jedi, which is saying something. Like, the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian are awesome. Then after that, we got... And this is sort of where I think things started to go into this area where, like, since then, up until The Acolyte, I feel like everything that came out afterwards was just kind of mid. And that I think, deflated the hype more than anything. Because the 3rd season of The Mandalorian was apparently the weakest one. And then it seemed like everything that they were putting out, like, the one thing that I hear about it, about everything, is like, well, it had the potential to be really good. Like, I watched Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan, I think, is 6 episodes, 8 episodes, something like that. The last half of it, very enjoyable. The first half of it, it's a slog. But we got to have Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan, which admittedly carries the experience because he's very good as that character. And we got to get Qui-Gon back too. That was cool.
I think there were a lot of mistakes in Obi-Wan that could have made it better overall. One, while having Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other was neat. It goes against the, what we know to canon is that Obi-Wan and Vader haven't seen each other since Mustafar. Or they're not supposed to have seen each other since Mustafar. Having them sense each other would have, that would have been different. That's just sensing each other. Having the Inquisitor there, the new Inquisitor that we've never seen before or heard referred to, having an Inquisitor character on the show would have been fine, but they kept trying to do this thing where she's the co-star.
Yeah.
Where it's just as much her story as it is Obi-Wan's. No. You need to pick a hero and focus on it, especially if it's a short series. You need to pick a character to be your main character and go with that.
Yeah, she wasn't a bad antagonist. Don't get me wrong, but the problem is that it's sort of like whenever Doctor Doom is on screen, you don't really care about the Mole Man. Yeah. And like if you got Darth Vader on the screen, you don't. And which, by the way, that was the last performance of James Earl Jones as Darth Vader. And even he didn't get to do all of it because he was in poor health at the time. They had to use AI to mimic his voice. Because you could tell in the last episode that that's what they did because the voice is James Earl Jones, but the cadence is Hayden Christensen's. So, but even so, it's like it was all right. It had some major flaws, but it had some really high points too. I've heard Andor is pretty good, but that's all you hear about it is Andor is pretty good.
I've never seen anybody talk about it.
It's not stellar, and it's not awful. So it's not so good that you need to get everyone to watch it, and it's not so dog shit that you need everybody to hate watch it.
Yeah.
It kind of runs, so it's kind of mid. Like, this is good. It could be better, but this is fine. Which again, that's another dangerous place to be for any piece of media because zero footprint.
Yeah.
Andor has there's no memes about Andor because Andor isn't great. Andor isn't dog shit.
That's kind of a common theme, and then we get to the Acolyte, which should have never happened. The only reason that it happened was because Kathleen Kennedy is embedded in Hollywood, and she effectively gave a job to Harvey Weinstein's assistant that she knew. And I don't remember the name of the lady who ran that show. She had no business being there. She had never written a publication, or she had never done any. Xavier got the name right, but she had never written anything science fiction fucking ever. And she had no grasp of Star Wars at all. It's like she's the type of person that, like, if you asked her about Star Wars, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love it. I love that one scene where Luke Skywalker fights Darth Maul in the Evil Star." She's that kind of person,
Cultural osmosis.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a disaster. We've gone over it. We've done multiple segments on the Acolyte. I really don't want to retread it. The one commonality that I'm noticing with this though isn't necessarily bad things. There's a lot of mid. There's a lot of things like Xavier said. I love that term. No cultural footprint. Nobody even remembers that these things happened. I feel like the reaction, at least that I saw, maybe this is just me, that I saw on social media was with Andor season 2, like they're gonna do that. I'm like, a lot of people were just saying, "Oh yeah, I remember Andor." Moving on. It's like people don't hate it, but yeah, that was indeed a thing that happened. The only thing some people I noticed that they said is like the most memorable thing about it was that Babish did a video where they did blue noodles. I thought that was pretty funny. But regardless, I think that that's the biggest problem is that mid feeling. Because I give George Lucas a lot of shit for the prequels. And I think a lot of it is deserved because the first movie was kind of okay. It has its highs and lows. Fucking Jar Jar Binks, man. Then the second film, Attack of the Clones, comes out. That one sucked. That movie sucks. And the directing was not good. Hayden Christensen's acting was wooden as fuck. And a lot of that comes to a lot of people forget that George Lucas is actually not that great of a director. Of the original trilogy, he only directed one of them.
And it was also when he didn't know a lot about directing at the time because he was like, he'd just come out of film school and directed like one other movie.
Yeah, so the smartest thing he did was bringing on Irvin Kershner for The Empire Strikes Back.
The other problem he did was that he would write the scripts and he would ask for opinions from people that work at Lucasfilm. Okay, what do you guys think? I want your honest opinions. Please remember, I sign your paychecks. I just want your opinions on this labor of love, these prequels to the greatest thing I've ever done. That people have been wanting for many, many years, that are the reason why you have jobs in the first place. Please give me your honest opinions. What do you think? They're great, George. As long as you have no follow-up questions, they're great. Yeah. I have to go now.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine probably the reaction was, is like at that point, the people that were all around George idolized him. You know? It wasn't necessarily people that at least I would consider his peers. Whereas you keep in mind, like Irvin Kershner, who directed Empire Strikes Back, he had done The Eyes of Laura Mars before that, which is a cult classic horror film. And then after that, he did Empire Strikes Back. He would go on to do Never Say Never Again and RoboCop 2.
Now,
so he was a seasoned director that really understood how to get the best out of character performances. And I really felt like George was not playing to his strengths. He is beautiful when it comes to concept. He's phenomenal at it. He also understands story flow. Because one thing, admittedly, that I will say about the prequels, they're all paced very well.
Episode 1 is actually a lot better movie, looking back.
I feel like if you got rid of Jar Jar, it would have been a lot better. Like, that's the big thing.
Personally, I think he just ran out of Japanese samurai movies to emulate.
He is a big Kurosawa fan. That is true. But yeah, like pacing and things like that, those he's very good with. But just the getting the individual performances out of actors like that, he just was not the right person. Because at the end of the day, like, if you look at the cast of the prequels, amazing casting. Absolutely fantastic. And it has aged pretty well, you know? But it's just, there's some elements of it. Though admittedly, Revenge of the Sith is good. I don't have a whole lot of gripes with that, except for like one or two scenes.
Apparently he co-directed that with, I think, his oldest son. And I think that was the decision that was made after Attack of the Clones, that he could stay on as long as he's not doing this himself. A lot of stories were going on at the time. Like the Lucasfilm board voted him off the Star Wars project at one point. So I couldn't tell you what was really true, only that we got the product we got. I think the issue with Attack of the Clones is that it's introducing us to characters we've already been introduced to, so it's kind of paced awkwardly. Phantom Menace is actually a pretty good movie. Looking back, it's aged very well. Like, in a vacuum, Phantom Menace, just as a movie that takes place in Star Wars, maybe not as the beginning of a trilogy, is actually pretty decent. Even with Jar Jar, which, warmest regards to Ahmed Best, wherever you are, because all the bullshit you got for that, you did not deserve that. That's just how George directed you to talk and act, and that's not your fault. Also to Jake Lloyd, that's not your fault that George directed you the way he did. Hayden Christensen, for all the hate he gets, George directed him to talk in ridiculous ways that made everyone think he was a shitty actor.
Yeah.
I think that honestly, people were afraid to tell him no, and he made some poor choices in where focus needed to be. He really, really wanted to sell that love story really hard in number 2.
Yeah.
And that's not what the movie was supposed to be about. Like,
regardless, though, like back to the Kathleen Kennedy thing. Like, the one thing that you can't really accuse what George Lucas was doing as being aggressively mid, because if you do a lot of things that are aggressively mid, people forget it, and that's the worst thing you can be. Is the worst thing you can invoke in the arts is apathy. Because if you do that, then you're fucked, honestly. And at the same time, though, Kathleen Kennedy saying that she's in for the long run is disappointing. It just means that Star Wars isn't going to go anywhere in regards to going up. So that's unfortunate, but at the same time, I just think that most people have already checked out, to be honest.
The only way Star Wars will ever come back and be anything close to what it was is if they can successfully pull off a KOTOR project.
That would be phenomenal. I don't believe they'll ever do it.
It'll never work. The only other thing they could do is to kick it to another period of the galaxy that's away from the Skywalkers. Maybe that's away from the Jedi, and do some movies there.
Then we got one.
I guess we're kind of running out of ideas, because my idea for a Star Wars movie was just a One Night in Mos Eisley.
That would be brutal, actually.
Yeah, it was a dude just lands there. He's offloading cargo. And then it's like, 8 hours later, he's battered, he's bloody, he's bruised, he's on the run from the Hutts. Wondering how it all turned to shit so fast because One Night in Mos Eisley.
I think the overall thing is that, like, I wouldn't want them necessarily to touch KOTOR because this current administration would miss the subtexts that exist within those games hard, especially 2.
Yeah.
Because the big thing about KOTOR 2, and I'm not going to go too in depth because we're already past our normal runtime anyway, is it is so much deeper than a lot of other Star Wars stories that have existed, and kind of calls into question a lot of concepts that other stories within Kathleen Kennedy's time has tried to do and fumbled hard. So I don't want them to touch the one thing that did it right, because they'll fumble that too. All right, let's go ahead and bring things to a close. Once again, everyone, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of On the Grind. Fun discussions this week. Glad to see Xavier's back with us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it goes without saying that we had fun this week. So I can't really think of a whole lot left to really say, except we're going to be working on hopefully getting Black Rhapsody out on crowdfunding very soon.
Yay!
And after that is taken care of, hopefully we can get some of me and Xavier's projects rolling out there as well. So fingers crossed. Give us prayers and all that other fun stuff. Lend us your power, and we will drop the spirit bomb. I promise. Just hopefully it'll be on an enemy that it actually works on.
Yeah.
They gotta be evil.
Yep, we'll find Kid Boo somewhere and whoop his ass. But regardless, folks, we appreciate every one of you. You know, if you're listening to us on Podcast Network, please leave us a rating. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like on YouTube videos, blah, 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 blah. Appreciate all you guys for being here with us. We will see you guys next week. But until then, my name is Micah Curtis, the President CEO of Grindstone Arts. Have yourselves a great rest of your week.
Frick.